How did you decide to kind of merge business and social justice long before it was popular, which it is very much so now?
Well, first I have to say that we have several hundred customers in Palo Alto. So when you say you did something, what really that means is that lots of people in Palo Alto and other places like that did things. So it's people in Palo Alto who donated the money, made the phone calls. So the question of why is really complicated. So I have to tell a story. It goes back to Dallas. And it goes like this. So I was a high school football player. And I was a high school football player a long time ago. So you're not old enough to remember the first moratorium against the Vietnam War, but it was on a Friday. And Friday is, of course, high school football in Texas. And in Dallas, if you wore an armband, you were expelled for inciting violence. And I wasn't a big anti-war person, but this so offended me that I put on an armband and wore it for the whole day. And because I was a starter on the football team, nobody said a word. They were unwilling to discipline someone and risk losing the game. So what I learned is that if you have privilege, and privilege comes in lots of ways, it's a wonderful platform to do social change. And so the short version of how I got here is that right now in the United States, if you do business, you sort of have a privilege. People think that if you're in business, you know more, you're cooler. If you're an entrepreneur, that's a good thing to do. So I'm committed to doing social change, and business seems like a really great way to do it.
Well, and you also have the privilege of having some economic resources, some revenue.
Yeah, so long as your shareholders are happy, your customers are happy, you can do anything you want. You don't have to beg for money, you don't have to send out fundraising solicitations. So if you can just make money, you have a lot of freedom. And since we've done that for a long time, we have lots of freedom.
Your dad was head of ARCO, is that right?
He ended up being head of ARCO. Won all sorts of awards for being a good environmentalist. I, of course, thought it was a horrible, terrible thing to be involved with the oil industry. And let him know that, but he still loves me.
So is what you did in response to that at all? I mean, in general?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, in a funny way, I'd love to be in the oil business. One of my
Prop 23?
One of my crazy ideas is I'd love to have a series of gasoline stations that had electric recharging stations, sold the cleanest diesel fuel, and donated a portion of the revenue to offset the damage that we're all doing when we buy gasoline. So no, I don't feel like I've run away from the oil industry. I do think I have some credibility in talking about particularly the Texas oil industry. And I think every single person in Palo Alto knows that Texas oil chieftains try to come in and ruin our very good global warming law. And it was quite fun to crush them overwhelmingly by defeating Prop 23.
So it was, for those that don't know, it was Credo Mobil's effort on a grassroots level that mobilized people to campaign against that.
Yes, lots of people worked on it, but we had a very particular role. In fact, I'd say we had two particular roles. We had the grassroots. So we have roughly 500,000 people on our California email list, and we asked them to do fun things like picket Valero gasoline stations and then call all of their friends and neighbors who were good environmentalists. So we made something like 200,000 phone calls. We made a huge number of calls. But we also changed the terms of the debate. So at the beginning, nobody wanted to call out that these were Texas oil companies. People wanted it to make it about clean energy or high-tech jobs. But in my experience, you need a good villain. And in California, it's hard to imagine better villains than two Texas oil companies.
What do you think are the most pressing issues? What is?
Well, that's really hard, of course. So the best thing I could say is that we think right now the biggest issue is the corporate takeover of the U.S. economy. Corporations are now more powerful than they have been any time since you or I were born. And the way that takes shape is that if there's a social cost to them, they work very hard to have somebody else pay it. If I had to pick a second issue, it's probably Afghanistan. So anyone who's studied the history of Afghanistan knows that every occupying power has lost since Genghis Khan. And so the notion of flushing down the toilet money that we could be using for healthcare or environmental protection or even better public schools, that's really painful.
Do you ever get tired? Do you ever feel like giving up?
I get tired several times a week at 6:45 in the morning at the end of my spinning class at Vive. So I start out, and there's great music and great instructors, but by the end I'm really tired.
And ready to take on...
And ready to take on the oil companies, the Pentagon, anybody else. So if you're asking, do I ever get discouraged and want to sort of crawl up and go away? Well, sure, but not very often. Every single thing that I've ever done that's been good has taken a long time. You know, whether it's raising two great kids, having friendships. So long as I have my spinning class, I've got good friends at work, the fights are fun.
You work with a number of people that are, coming into the workforce. What advice do you have for them about how to engage in the world meaningfully?
The first thing I say is to live really cheaply, because since social change is hard, takes a long time, you never know when it's going to happen or if you're going to give money. If you live too high on the hog and you don't have savings, then you have to make some really tough choices and you probably have to quit. The second thing is to do it with friends. Social change work is really hard, and if you do it in an isolated, lonely sort of way, it's really impossible. You sort of can't be a martyr about it. And I guess the third would be pick 3 or 4 books that you read in high school or college, maybe some great professor that sort of got you going in the first place, and read them every few years to remember why you're doing it.
How about Jerry Brown?
How about Jerry Brown? How old is Jerry Brown?
Well, he's older than you are, and you worked in his administration some years ago.
A long time ago, yeah.
As an economic advisor. What do you hope he'll do? What do you think he'll do?
I think that he's going to slash spending. I'd be shocked if he didn't make some symbolic moves like living cheaply, cutting the salaries of top officials, lambasting the UC officials who make $500,000 and $600,000 while, cutting other funding. So he'll do some sort of things that get in the press, but at the end of the day, he's going to have to cut.
So what about the road not taken? Is there any faint notion of anything that, what if I'd done this, what if I'd done that for you?
Oh, sure. I wouldn't even say it's faint. I would have loved to be a professional tennis player. That would have been great. I think of my friends who are full-time academics who have tenure at some great place, and I had a chance to do the academic route. I don't know if I ever would have gotten tenure, but if I had, that would have been fun. So I love the teaching. Getting to hang out with smart young people is not much better than that. So that's probably the main thing.
So how about balance in your life? You've got all these parts. You've got work, which blurs into the political, which seems bundled up with itself, and then your personal life. Is it all just one big stew, or how
I have perfect balance. I just don't sleep very much. So balance for me is having time with family. I'll do almost anything to do that, even if I drive in the middle of the night. It means getting physical outlets. So I love to go on bike rides. I play lots of tennis, play lots of basketball. You have to have some intellectual outlet, so I get to teach. I need to have fights, so I have all my political activism. And I get to work with incredibly interesting people at work. So, and I read spy novels all the time. So I read a lot. So the only issue in my life is it's not one of balance. Balance is good. It's just amount of time.
Why Palo Alto? You work in San Francisco, you do work kind of all over the country. Why here? How did you went to Stanford undergraduate, so you had a connection.
Well, I think I read somewhere that people who graduate from Stanford live closest to their university than any other graduates. I don't know if that's true, but I don't think there's a better place to live in the whole country. I mean, the only problem is the cost of housing. Maybe Boulder's a distant second, but Palo Alto's the best place. I mean, the bane of my existence is my commute to San Francisco. But other than that, why live anywhere else?
So why is it, for you, why is it so great?
It has incredibly interesting people who by and large are really friendly and open to new ideas. It cares immensely about the environment. It cares about things that I care about.
So shared values.
Shared values that people act on, so that they don't just sort of think about the values. I mean, it's 2 miles from Stanford, which means that I get to teach at a world-class university part-time. And, you know, if you have your kids here, then through your kids you get to know their parents, and why leave good friends? So, it's easy.
We haven't talked about the fact that you write for the Huffington Post occasionally, too. Do you write for other outlets with any frequency?
No, that's a good place to write. And I tend to write when I get bugged about something.
Michael, tell me about your news gathering routine.
Well, of course, if it's Friday, I have to read the weekly, and I'm still upset that it's only once a week rather than twice a week. But every other day of the week, it's pretty straightforward. Before I go to bed, I always look at the New York Times online, because they post, you know, at 9:02 or so, and that's really exciting. So I have that to dream about. And then when I wake up before I go to my spinning class, I look at talkingpointsmemo.com, which is a great site. I look at Politico. I look at Drudge Report, see sort of what the crazy people are saying. And then I go back to the New York Times. After that, I post something interesting on the Credo Facebook page, where I have about 50,000 fans. And then I click on home and I see what all my friends are doing. So I do that that's my cycle. Works quite well.